How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, April 15th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, of course, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Wednesday, April 14th. And today, of course, I'm going to preview everything that's going on today as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. With the NFL no longer in season, of course, the natural place to start here is in the NBA. And looking out into the NBA last night, there were a lot of crazy games last night. And the primetime games yesterday were on ESPN. And in the first one, the Philadelphia 76ers hosted the Brooklyn Nets. It was a matchup between the top two teams in the Eastern Conference. And in this one, the Philadelphia 76ers would edge the Brooklyn Nets 123 to 117. I guess the difference was the first half, in which they outscored Brooklyn by 7 in the first half. The Nets tried to come back, but it simply wouldn't be enough. They outscored them by 10 in the first three quarters. For the Brooklyn Nets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard out of Duke University, my current school, Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving would finish with 37 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals. As the Nets' elite point guard played 33 minutes, he shot 13 for 22 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 10 for 10 from the line. And he was the leading scorer, of course, for the night for the Brooklyn Nets. For the Philadelphia 76ers, on the other hand, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Joel Embiid, out of Kansas, who finished with 39 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks in 33 minutes, as he shot 13 for 29 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and 10 for 11 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting power forward, Tobias Harris, would finish with 26 points and 5 rebounds, alongside 2 blocks in 34 minutes, as he shot 11 for 17 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And their elite starting point guard, Ben Simmons, would finish with 17 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists, and 3 steals in 35 minutes, as the LSU product shot 6 for 11 from the field and 5 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the Philadelphia 76ers are now 38-17. They have the best record in the Eastern Conference. They have now won their last 3 games and 6 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit 1 game ahead of the second place Brooklyn Nets, back into first place. And for the entire conference, they sit 22 games ahead of the 5th place Detroit Pistons, just to show you where they are at this point in the season. With this loss, the Brooklyn Nets are 37-18. That is the second best record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've still won 7 of their last 10. They sit 1 game behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers, and they sit 2.5 games ahead of the third place Milwaukee Bucks, just to show where the Brooklyn Nets are in the conference. And then jumping out to the other primetime matchup in Memphis, the Memphis Grizzlies would host the Dallas Mavericks. The Memphis Grizzlies would lead the Mavericks by 6 going into the fourth quarter. They would actually shoot free throws up by 2, but then eventually the Mavericks would have the ball with 2 seconds left, down by 2, and then Luka Doncic would hit probably one of the wildest three-pointers he hit in his life. And with that three-pointer, the Dallas Mavericks, of course, would be the 7th team in the Western Conference to cross the 30-win threshold. But first, looking out to how the Grizzlies fared in this matchup, their leading scorer was their starting shooting guard out of Duke, Grayson Allen, who finished with 23 points and 2 steals in 35 minutes, as Grayson Allen shot 7 for 13 from the field, 6 for 11 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, John Morant, would finish with 17 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists in 35 minutes, as he shot 7 for 15 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. For the Dallas Mavericks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, Luka Doncic, who finished with 29 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 34 minutes. Luka shot 10 for 20 from the field, 3 for 10 from 3, and 6 for 9 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting center, former Eastern Conference All-Star Kristaps Porzingis, would finish with 21 points and 6 rebounds in 32 minutes, as he shot 7 for 13 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the line. With this win, the Dallas Mavericks are now 30-24. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference. With this win, they've now won 7 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game below the 6th place the Portland Trailblazers. They now sit 2.5 games ahead of the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, just to show where they are, as they trail the first place Utah Jazz by 10.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 27-26. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference. Although they lost this last game, they still won about 6 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they sit 2.5 games behind the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, and they sit a game ahead of the 9th place Warriors and the 10th place San Antonio Spurs, who are sitting just on the outside looking in. Overall, they trail the first place Utah Jazz by 13 games in the conference. Looking at the games that weren't on primetime, jumping out to Minneapolis, the Minnesota Timberwolves host the Milwaukee Bucks, and in this one, the Milwaukee Bucks would beat the Timberwolves 130-105. They would outscore the Timberwolves by 12 points in the second and by 10 in the third to give them their 34th win of the season. For the Minnesota Timberwolves on the night, their leading scorer would be the number 1 overall pick from the 2020 NBA Draft, Anthony Edwards, who finished with 24 points and 3 steals in 31 minutes, as he shot 8 for 21 from the field, 5 for 11 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line on the day. And then for the Milwaukee Bucks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, Chris Middleton, who finished with 27 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists in 25 minutes, as he shot 9 for 15 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 34-20. That is the 3rd best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won their last 2 games. They've now won 5 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they sit 2.5 games behind the 2nd place Brooklyn Nets, and they currently sit 4.5 games ahead of the 4th place Atlanta Hawks, as they currently trail the 1st place Philadelphia 76ers by 3.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 14-42. That is the worst record in the Western Conference. They've now lost their last 2 games and 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 14.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, and currently they sit 27.5 games behind the 1st place Utah Jazz in the conference. Jumping out to Charlotte, the Charlotte Hornets hosted the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers were able to beat the Hornets 103-90. They would go on to outscore Charlotte by 8 in the first half, kind of carry that momentum through the end of the game as they outscored Charlotte in every quarter. For the Hornets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard, Scary Terry Rozier, who finished with 22 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, and 4 steals in 43 minutes, as he shot 9 for 20 from the field and 4 for 10 from 3. Their starting small forward out of Michigan State, Miles Bridges, would finish with 20 points and 7 rebounds in 37 minutes, as he shot 7 for 15 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. For the Cleveland Cavaliers in this matchup, their leading scorer will come off the bench as their power forward out of Baylor, Taurean Prince, would finish with 25 points and 6 turnovers in 29 minutes, as he shot 9 for 13 from the field, 6 for 8 from 3, and he was 1 for 1 from the foul line, making his only shot. With this win, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 20-34. That is the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won 7 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 7 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently sit 17.5 games behind the 1st place Philadelphia 76ers in the entire conference. With this loss, the Charlotte Hornets are now 27-27. That is the 8th best record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've lost their last 3 and they've lost 6 of their last 10, but they're still holding on to that playoff spot. They sit half a game behind the 7th place defending Eastern Conference champs, Miami Heat. And they currently sit 1 game ahead of the 9th place Indiana Pacers, who are on the outside looking in, as the Hornets currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers by 10.5 games in the conference, just to show where both these teams are. Jumping out to Tampa, the Toronto Raptors host the San Antonio Spurs, and in this matchup, the Raptors would beat the Spurs 117-112, winning by 5 after outscoring the Spurs by 4 in the second half. For the Spurs in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard, Devin White, who finished with 25 points and 5 assists in 34 minutes, as he shot 7 for 16 from the field, 6 for 11 from 3, and 5 for 7 from the foul line. And off the bench, their point guard, Patty Mills, would finish with 23 points in 30 minutes, shooting 8 for 15 from the field, 5 for 11 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. For the Toronto Raptors in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting power forward, Pascal Siakam. It was their small forward OG Anunoby, but first Pascal Siakam, their elite starting power forward, would finish with 20 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in 37 minutes as he shot 7 for 20 from the field and 6 for 7 from the foul line. But their leading scorer would be their starting small forward out of Indiana, OG Anunoby, who finished with 22 points and 2 steals in 34 minutes as he shot 7 for 14 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Toronto Raptors are now 22-34. That is the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now only won 4 of their last 10 games, including this one. They currently sit 6 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 16.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 26-27. That is the 10th best record in the Western Conference. With this loss, they've now lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit alongside the Golden State Warriors. They both sit 1 game behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, who are just inside the playoff picture, as they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 14 total games in the conference, just to show where the Spurs are. Jumping out to Detroit, the Detroit Pistons, the team holding the worst record in the East, hosted the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Clippers would end up having to outscore the Pistons by 6 in the fourth quarter to win by 2. They won this game 198 to pick up their 39th win of the season. For the Detroit Pistons in this matchup, their leading scorer will be their starting small forward, Jeremy Grant, who finished with 28 points in 36 minutes, shooting 10 for 21 from the field and a perfect 7 for 7 from the line. For the Los Angeles Clippers, their leading scorer will be their starting point guard, Reggie Jackson, who finished with 29 points and 6 rebounds in 37 minutes. He shot 12 for 24 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. Of course, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard did not play last night. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 39-18. That is the 3rd best record in the Western Conference. They've now won their last 7 games. That is currently the best winning streak in the NBA right now. They've won 8 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they sit 1.5 games behind the second-place Phoenix Suns, and they sit 3 games ahead of the 4th-place Denver Nuggets to show where they are in that 3rd spot. And in the Western Conference, they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 3 games, by 3 total games. In the Eastern Conference, with this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 16-39. That is the worst record in the conference. They've now lost their last 3 games. They've now lost 6 of their last 10. They currently sit 11.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 22 total points in the conference with this loss. Jumping out to Chicago, the Chicago Bulls hosted the Orlando Magic, and the Magic were able to beat the Bulls 115-106. The big difference would be the 3rd quarter, where they outscored Chicago by 20. They also outscored Chicago by 10 in the 1st quarter as well. For Chicago in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their all-star shooting guard Zach LaVine, who finished with 30 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 blocks in 39 minutes, as LaVine shot 11 for 22 from the field, 6 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And also for the Bulls, their all-star center Nikola Vucevic would finish with 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 34 minutes, as he shot 11 for 20 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. For the Orlando Magic, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, James Ennis III. And in this matchup, he would finish with 22 points of his own. And he would also finish with 4 rebounds and 3 assists in 31 minutes, as he shot 8 for 12 from the field, 5 for 6 from 3, and he made his only free throw of the night, so he was 1 for 1 from the foul line. With this win, the Orlando Magic are now 18-37. That is the 2nd worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now only won 3 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 9.5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the 1st place Philadelphia 76ers by 20 whole games in the conference. With this loss, the Chicago Bulls are now 22-32. That is the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now lost their last 4 games, and they've lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 5 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers by 15.5 games in the conference as a whole. Jumping out to New Orleans, the New Orleans Pelicans hosted the New York Knicks, and in this matchup, the Knicks would beat the Pelicans 116-106 as former Duke teammates R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson faced off against one another. For the New Orleans Pelicans in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting small forward out of Duke, Brandon Ingram, who finished with 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists in 36 minutes as he shot 9 for 22 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. And also alongside him in the starting lineup, the Pelicans' elite starting power forward, all-star Zion Williamson, would finish with 25 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 blocks in 35 minutes, as Zion Williamson would shoot 10 for 19 from the field and 5 for 8 from the foul line. For the New York Knicks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their all-star power forward, Julius Randle, who finished with 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists in 42 minutes as he shot 11 for 26 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the line. And off the bench, their shooting guard Alec Burks would finish with 21 points and 7 rebounds in 22 minutes, as Burks would shoot 7 for 12 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the New York Knicks are now 29-27. That is the 6th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've now won their last 4 games and 5 of their last 10. In the playoff picture, they currently sit half a game behind the 5th place Boston Celtics. They sit half a game ahead of the 7th place defending Eastern Conference champs Miami Heat. And they currently trail the 1st place Philadelphia 76ers by 9.5 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the New Orleans Pelicans are now 25-30. That is the 5th worst record in the Western Conference. They have lost 5 of their last 10. And they currently sit 3 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they currently sit 16 whole games behind the 1st place Utah Jazz in the Western Conference. Just to give a sense of where the Pelicans are. Jumping out to Houston, the Houston Rockets hosted the Indiana Pacers as the Pacers were able to beat the Rockets 132-124. They would go on to outscore Houston by 20 in the first half, and that momentum would carry on through the end of the game. For the Rockets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, John Wall, out of Kentucky, who finished with 31 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes, as Wall shot 12 for 28 from the field and 7 for 9 from the foul line. All of his makes were inside the 3-point line as he went 0 for 7 from 3. Their starting power forward, Kelly Olynyk, would finish with 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 steals in 38 minutes as he shot 10 for 16 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And their starting center, Christian Wood, would finish with 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 37 minutes as he shot 11 for 21 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 1 for 1 from the foul line. For the Indiana Pacers on the night, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard, Karis LeVert, who finished with 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals alongside 6 turnovers in 30 minutes as he shot 10 for 20 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from 3. Their starting point guard, Malcolm Brogdon, would finish with 23 points, 14 rebounds, and 9 assists in 34 minutes as he shot 7 for 19 from the field and 6 for 7 from the foul line. And their all-stars power forward, Domantas Sabonis, would finish with 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists in 37 minutes as he shot 10 for 18 from the field and 2 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Indiana Pacers are now 26-28. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference as they have now won 5 of their last 10 games. They now sit a full game behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the playoff picture, and they currently sit 11.5 games behind the 1st place Philadelphia 76ers in the conference. With this loss, the Houston Rockets are now 14-41. They have now lost their last 4 games and 9 of their last 10. They currently sit 14 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they currently sit 27 whole games behind the 1st place Utah Jazz outside or in the Western Conference as a whole. Jumping out to Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Thunder hosted the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors were able to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 147-109 by 38 points. They were going to outscore Oklahoma City by 17 points in the second quarter. They outscored them by 21 points in the third. For the Thunder in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward, Darius Bazley, who finished with 22 points and 8 rebounds in 28 minutes, as he shot 10 for 18 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. For the Golden State Warriors, their leading scorer would be their goated starting point guard, Steph Curry, who finished with 42 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists in 29 minutes, as the Davidson product would shoot 14 for 20 from the field, 11 for 16 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Golden State Warriors are now 27-28. That is the 9th best record in the Western Conference. They've now won their last 3 games and 5 of their last 10. They sit a full game behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 14 total games in the Western Conference. With this loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 20-35. That is the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference. They've now lost their last 8 games. They are tied with the Sacramento Kings for the worst losing streak in the Western Conference and the NBA. They've now lost 9 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 8 games behind the Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 21 total games in the Western Conference. Jumping out to Denver, the Denver Nuggets hosted the reigning Eastern Conference champions, Miami Heat, and were able to pull up a 123-106 win. They would outscore Miami by 16 in the second. That would be the big difference to give them this win, their 35th of the season. For Miami, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Bam Adebayo, out of Kentucky, who finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks, alongside 6 turnovers in 30 minutes. Bam would shoot 7 for 16 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Alongside him in the Miami Heat starting lineup, the Miami Heat elite starting small forward, Jimmy Butler, would finish with 13 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists, and 3 steals in 28 minutes, as he shot 5 for 8 from the field and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. For the Denver Nuggets, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, Michael Porter Jr., who finished with 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 33 minutes, as he shot 10 for 14 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. Alongside him in the Nuggets starting lineup, their elite starting center, Nikola Jokic, would finish with 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists, alongside 2 blocks in 32 minutes, as the NBA's double-double leader would shoot 6 for 14 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Denver Nuggets are now 35-20. That is currently the 4th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won 8 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 3 games behind the 3rd place Los Angeles Clippers in the playoff picture. They also sit a game ahead of the 5th place defending champions Los Angeles Lakers, and they currently trail the 1st place Utah Jazz by 6 games in the conference. With this loss, the Miami Heat are now 28-27. That is the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now lost their last 2 games, but they've still won 6 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit half a game below the 6th place New York Knicks, and they now sit half a game ahead of the 8th place Charlotte Hornets, to give you a sense of where they sit in the playoff picture. And they sit 10 full games behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers in the conference. Last but not least, the Sacramento Kings hosted the Washington Wizards, and the Wizards were able to beat the Kings 123-111. The big difference would be the first quarter, where they outscored Sacramento by 11. For the Kings in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard out of Kentucky, De'Aaron Fox, who finished with 33 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 6 steals. A swipe of the Fox lived up to his Instagram handle. In 40 minutes, he shot 13 for 28 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. For the Washington Wizards in this matchup, their leading scorer will be their elite starting shooting guard, Bradley Beal, who finished with 31 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 turnovers in 36 minutes, as Beal shot 10 for 22 from the field, 2 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 9 for 9 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, would finish with 25 points, 15 rebounds, 11 assists, and 4 steals, alongside 7 turnovers in 36 minutes, as Russ shot 12 for 22 from the field and 1 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Washington Wizards are now 21-33. That is the fourth worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've won their last 2 games, and they've won 5 of their last 10. They currently sit 6 games behind the 8th place Charlotte Hornets outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently sit 16.5 games behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers as a whole in the conference. With this loss, the Sacramento Kings are now 22-33. That is the 4th worst record in the Western Conference. Alongside the Thunder, their 8-game losing streak is the worst losing streak in the NBA, as they have now lost 8 of their last 10. And they currently sit 6 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture. And they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 19 total games in the conference, just to show where the Sacramento Kings are. With that said, those were all of the NBA games from yesterday. There were a lot of them. Looking forward to what's going on today, starting with the prime times. At 7:30, it'll be an Eastern Conference 3 versus 4 matchup, as the Atlanta Hawks, led by Trae Young, will host the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis Antetokounmpo, led by Chris Middleton. This will be a good matchup between these two teams. And then at 10 o'clock, it will be the matchup between the two NBA teams that currently hold the most championships, as the Los Angeles Lakers will host the Boston Celtics at 10 o'clock on TNT, of course, without LeBron James or Anthony Davis. At 8 o'clock, the Cleveland, or outside of the 2 TNT games, outside of the primetime games, at 8 o'clock, the Cleveland Cavaliers will host the Golden State Warriors, which will be a matchup for 4 straight finals in the 2010s. Of course, Stephen Curry loves facing off against the Cavaliers. And then at 10 o'clock, the Phoenix Suns, the current holders of the second best record in the West, look to be the second team in the NBA to eclipse 40 wins once they take on the Kings at home. But that's everything going on in the NBA. Staying within the arena, but jumping to the ice just to get a sense of what's going on in the NHL. And of course, I got to let everyone know that everyone has to play within their own division, because just to limit the spread of COVID. Starting north of the border, looking at what's going on in Canada, the Ottawa Senators hosted the Winnipeg Jets, and the Jets were able to beat the Senators 3-2 as they scored 2 of their 3 goals in the third period to pick up their 26th win of the season. With this win, the Winnipeg Jets now hold the second best record in the North Division, as they now trail the Maple Leafs by 5 in the table. Jumping out to Montreal, the Montreal Canadiens hosted the Calgary Flames, and the Flames were able to beat the Canadiens 4-1 as 2 of their goals were scored in the third period. They now have with their 19th win of the season, the Calgary Flames now hold the 5th best position in the North Division, as they now trailed the Toronto Maple Leafs by 11 points, or by 19 total points in the division. Jumping out to see what's going on the West Coast of things, because every West Coast team played. The Minnesota Wild hosted the Arizona Coyotes and were able to pull off a 5-2 win. Their right winger Zuccarello would lead the way, and with their 25th win of the season, the Minnesota Wild now sit with the 3rd best record in the West, as they now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 11 points. Speaking of the Colorado Avalanche, the Avalanche went to St. Louis and were able to beat the Blues 4-3, as they are the first team in the Western Division to eclipse 30 wins. 3 of their 4 goals would come in the second period. Their left fielder Hoffman would finish with 2 goals and an assist, with 3 of the 4 scoring plays for the Avalanche. With this win, the Colorado Avalanche are sitting on top of the West Division with 64 points, as they sit 4 points ahead of the second place Golden Knights at this very moment. Speaking of the Golden Knights, they were able to beat the Los Angeles Kings in Staples Center 6-2. Their left winger Nosek would finish with a goal and 2 assists himself, and with their 29th win, they now sit second, as like I said earlier, they now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 4 games, as both of these two teams sitting at the top are now on 4-game winning streaks. And then jumping to San Jose, the Sharks hosted the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks were able to pull up a 4-1 win. With their 14th win of the season, the Anaheim Ducks still sit at the very bottom of the West Division, as they trail the Colorado Avalanche by 29 points total in the division. With that said, that's everything going on with hockey. Looking out to see what's going on today, starting with the primetime matchups at 7 o'clock. The Tampa Bay Lightning will host the Florida Panthers on NBC Sports Network, as those are 2 of the 3 teams that are currently tied for the best standing in the division. And then at 8:30, the On ESPN Plus, the Dallas Stars will host the Columbus Blue Jackets. Outside of the primetime games, the Toronto Maple Leafs will host the Winnipeg Jets at 7. At the same time, the Boston Bruins will host the New York Islanders. The New York Rangers will host the New Jersey Devils. The Washington Capitals will host the Buffalo Sabres. The Carolina Hurricanes will host the Nashville Predators, and the Pittsburgh Penguins will host the Philadelphia Flyers. And then at 7:30, the Detroit Red Wings will host the Chicago Blackhawks. That's what the NHL, of course, is looking like. Shifting really quickly to the MLB, because, of course, the MLB season is just starting to get underway as well. Starting off in in Florida, the Toronto Blue Jays hosted the New York Yankees. And in a game that would go all the way down to the 9th inning, it would be a Bo Bichette walk-off solo home run that would seal the win for the Toronto Blue Jays, their 6th of the season. For the New York Yankees in this matchup, the start would go to their elite starting pitcher, Corey Kluber, who allowed 3 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters. The loss would go to their relief pitcher, Chad Green. With this loss, Chad Green is now 0-2 on the season. He didn't even get a single player out. He allowed a home run on the very first pitch at the bottom of the 9th. For the New York Yankees in this matchup, for their hitters in this matchup, their elite right fielder, Aaron Judge, would go 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. As Aaron Judge hit 2 home runs last night, he has 4 on the season. Their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, would go 1 for 4 as he struck out himself. And their elite shortstop, Gleyber Torres, would go 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs and a walk, as Gleyber Torres would finish with 2 walks on the day. For the Toronto Blue Jays, the start would go to their starting pitcher, TJ Zeuch, who allowed 4 earned runs in 4 innings pitches. He struck out 2. The win would go to their relief pitcher, Rafael Dolis. With his win, Dolis is now 1-0 as a starting pitcher. Their shortstop, Bo Bichette, would end up going 3 for 5 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs, as he, as well as Aaron Judge, hit 2 home runs. Their elite designated hitter, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., will go 2 for 4 for himself. And then their first baseman, Rowdy Tellez, would go 2 for 4 with 2 runs. With this win, the Toronto Blue Jays are now 6-6. That is the second best record in the AL East, as they currently trail the Boston Red Sox by 3 whole games in the division. With this loss, the New York Yankees are now 5-7. They are tied with the Tampa Bay Rays for the worst record in the division, as they trailed the Boston Red Sox by 4 total games in the division, just to get a sense of where they are. Jumping out to St. Louis, the St. Louis Cardinals hosted the 2019 World Champs, the Washington Nationals. And in this one, the Nationals will go on to blank the Cardinals 6-0, as Joe Ross will get off to yet another amazing start. For the St. Louis Cardinals, the loss will go to their starting pitcher, Adam Wainwright, who allowed 3 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters on the day. In their lineup, their elite first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, will go 0 for 4 as he struck out twice. Their elite third baseman, Nolan Arenado, will go 1 for 4 on the day for himself. No one on the team was able to log more than 1 hit. For the Washington Nationals, the win will go to their starting pitcher, Joe Ross. Joe Ross would allow no earned runs and only 4 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. Their shortstop, Trey Turner, would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run. Their elite right fielder, Juan Soto, would end up going 2 for 5 with an RBI and 2 runs on the day. And with this win for the Nationals, they are now 3-6 on the season. That is the second worst record in the National League East at the very moment, as they currently trail the first place New York Mets by 2.5 games in the division. With this loss, the St. Louis Cardinals are now 6-6. That is the third best record in the NL Central, as they currently trail the Brewers and the Reds by a game in the NL Central, just to show where they are. Speaking of the Brewers hosted the Chicago Cubs and were able to pull off a 7-0 win at home, as 4 of their runs would come in the 6th inning, as Corbin Burns put up one of the pitching performances of MLB history. He is the first player in like 120 years to throw 30 strikeouts in an MLB season without pitching a walk at all. One of MLB's most impressive feats by a pitcher. And then just looking out to how the Cubs performed in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Jake Arrieta, who allowed 3 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters. With this loss, Arrieta is now 2-1 on the season. And the only player for the Cubs that would log more than one hit would be their right fielder, Jason Hayward. He went 2 for 3. And their elite shortstop, Javier Baez, would go 0 for 4 as he went on to strike out 3 times for the day. For Milwaukee, the win, of course, would go to Corbin Burnes. He would allow no earned runs and only 2 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 10 batters on the day. With this win, Corbin Burnes is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. Their third baseman, Travis Shaw, will go 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. He hit his third home run of the season. And then their right fielder, Avisail Garcia, would finish 2 for 4 with a run. With this win, the Milwaukee Brewers are now 7-5, tied with the Cincinnati Reds for the best record in the NL Central as they sit a game ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals. With this loss, the Chicago Cubs are now 5-7, tied with the Pittsburgh Pirates for the worst record in the NL Central, as they currently trail the Brewers and the Reds by 2 games in the division as a whole. Jumping out to Kansas City, the Kansas City Royals hosted the Los Angeles Angels and were able to pull up a 6-1 win after scoring 4 of their 6 runs in the last 2 innings. It would end up being a very big win for Kansas City. Looking at how the Los Angeles Angels fared in this matchup, the start would go to Griffin Canning, who allowed 2 earned runs in the 5 innings that he pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. With this loss, Canning is now 0-1 on the season. In their lineup, their goated center fielder Mike Trout would go 2 for 4 with a run for himself. Jared Walsh, the right fielder, was the only player to bring a run home as he went 1 for 3 with an RBI. For Kansas City, the win went to Brad Keller. Brad Keller would allow 1 earned run in 5.2 innings as he struck out 5 batters on the day. With this win, he is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. Their elite second baseman, Whit Merrifield, will go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. Their elite designated hitter Salvador Perez would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs as he now has 3 home runs on the season. Their first baseman Carlos Santana will go 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs and a run as Carlos Santana now has 2 home runs on the season. And then Michael Turner and Hunter Dozier, their center fielder and third baseman, would each go 2 for 4 with a run each. With this win, the Kansas City Royals are now 6-4, sitting on top of the AL Central by half a game over the second place Cleveland Indians at the moment. And with this loss, the Los Angeles Angels are now 7-5. That is still the best record in the AL West. They currently sit half a game ahead of the second place Seattle Mariners at the moment. Jumping out to Minneapolis, in a couple games that were postponed, the Twins would host the Red Sox in a doubleheader. In the first matchup, the Red Sox would end up beating the Twins 3-2 as all 3 of their runs came in the second inning. In this matchup for the Twins, the loss would go to their starting pitcher Kenta Maeda, who would allow 3 earned runs and 3 runs in 4.1 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters. With this loss, like I said, Kenta Maeda is now 1-1 as a starting pitcher. Their second baseman, Jorge Polanco, would end up going 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs on the day, the 2 RBIs that the Twins needed. And their elite designated hitter, Nelson Cruz, would end up going 1 for 2 for himself. For the Boston Red Sox, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Nate Eovaldi, who allowed 2 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters. The save would go to Matt Barnes. That would be his second on the season as he struck out 2 batters and allowed no hits in 1 inning. For the Red Sox, their second baseman, Christian Arroyo, will go 2 for 4 with an RBI for himself. Their center fielder, Alex Verdugo, will go 2 for 4. Their elite designated hitter, JD Martinez, will go 0 for 3 as he went on to walk once and he struck out twice. And then their shortstop, Xander Bogaerts, would finish 2 for 4 for himself. With this win, the Boston Red Sox transitioned into the second game of the doubleheader where they beat the Twins 7-1. 6 of their 7 runs would come in the 5th inning, and with both of these But first, looking at to how the Twins fared in the second game of this doubleheader, the start and the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Jose Barrios, who allowed 4 earned runs in 4.1 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters. With this loss, Jose Barrios is now 2-1 on the season as a starter. Their third baseman, Josh Donaldson, will go 1-for-2 with a run for himself, and their shortstop, Jorge Polanco, will be the only player with more than one hit as he finished 2-for-3 on the day. For the Boston Red Sox, the win will go to their starting pitcher, Eduardo Rodriguez, who allowed only one earned run and 5 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. With this win, Rodriguez is now 2-0 as a starting pitcher. Their right fielder, Alex Verdugo, will go 3-for-4 in the with 3 RBIs and 2 runs in the second game as he hit his second home run of the season. Their third baseman, Rafael Devers, will go 2-for-4 with 2 RBIs and a run. And then just letting it carry on, Alex Verdugo for the day would finish with 5 hits in his 6 at-bats. He would finish with 5 RBIs in his 8 at-bats on the day. So great performance from him. And with this win, with both of these wins, the Boston Red Sox are now 9-3, sitting at the top of the AL East with the sole lead as they sit 3 games ahead of the second place Tampa Bay, Toronto, or I guess for the moment they're Tampa Bay, but now Toronto Blue Jays. With this loss, the Minnesota Twins are now 5-7. That is the worst record in the AL Central as they currently trail the Kansas City Royals by 2 games in the division. Jumping out to San Francisco, the San Francisco Giants hosted the Cincinnati Reds and were able to pull off a 3-0 win as 2 of their runs came in the 5th. And they were able to hold Cincinnati to only 4 hits on the day. For Cincinnati, the start will go to Tyler Mahle, who would allow only 1 earned run and 2 runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 7 total batters on the day. And none of their batters would log more than 1 hit on the day. Their elite shortstop, Eugenio Suarez, would go 0-for-4 as he struck out twice on the day. For the San Francisco Giants, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Johnny Cueto, who would allow no earned runs and 5 hits in 5.2 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. The save will go to Jake McGee as he allowed only 1 hit and struck out 1 batter in the 1 inning that he pitched. With this win, Jake McGee now has 6 saves on the season. And then in the lineup for San Francisco, the only player to log more than 1 RBI was their second baseman, Donovan Solano. And then their center fielder, Slater, would finish 1-for-3 with an RBI and a run for himself, as Dubon, the pinch hitter, and Casali, the catcher, would also finish with RBIs themselves. With this win, the San Francisco Giants are now 8-4. They are tied, or they're not tied. They now hold the second best record in the National League West as they trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by 2 total games in the division. And with this loss, the Cincinnati Reds are now 7-5, tied with the Milwaukee Brewers for the best record in the NL Central at the moment. Staying within the NL Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates hosted staying within the Central and the West, the Padres hosted the Pittsburgh Pirates hosted the San Diego Padres and were able to pull off a 5-1 win as they were able to give Joe Musgrove his first loss of the season after Joe Musgrove's no-hitter in his last start. For the Padres in this matchup, Joe Musgrove would get the start. He allowed 1 earned run and 4 hits in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. Their elite third baseman, Manny Machado, will go 0-for-3 with a walk and a run. And alongside him, their shortstop, Ha-Sung Kim, would finish going 2-for-3 on the day for the Padres. For the Pirates in this matchup, the win and, of course, the start will go to Tyler Anderson as he allowed 1 earned run and 5.1 innings pitches. He struck out 2 batters. First of all, with this loss, Joe Musgrove is 2-1, and with this win, Tyler Anderson is now 1-2 as a starting pitcher. In the lineup for Pittsburgh, their second baseman, Adam Frazier, would end up going 3-for-5 with 2 RBIs and a run for himself. And then their right fielder, Gregor Polanco, would go 2-for-2 with 2 walks as he would finish with 1 RBI and 2 runs. As he hit his first home run of the season, he made it to first base, or he made it on base in every single at bat for him. With this win, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now 5-7. They are tied with the Chicago Cubs for the worst record in the division as they trail the Brewers and the Reds by 2 games. With this loss, the San Diego Padres are now 8-5. That is the 3rd best record in the National League West as they trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by 2.5 games in the division. Jumping out to Houston, the Houston Astros hosted the Detroit Tigers, and the Tigers were able to beat the Astros 6-4 as they scored all 6 of their runs in the first 4 innings of this one. For the Astros in this matchup, the start and the loss would go to Lance McCullers Jr., who allowed all 6 of the runs for Detroit in the 3.2 innings that he pitches. He struck out 3 batters on the day. For the Houston Astros, their first baseman, Yuli Gurriel, would end up going 2 for 3 with 2 RBIs for himself. He was the only player that really brought, other than their catcher, Jason Castro, that would end up bringing multiple runs home. Castro would go 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs and a run as he had his second home run of the season. For the Detroit Tigers, the start and the win would go to Michael Fulmer, as Fulmer allowed 2 earned runs in 5 innings pitched, and he had 2 strikeouts on the day. The former American League Rookie of the Year is now 1-0 on the season, as of course the save would go to their closer, Brian Garcia. And in the lineup, their left fielder, Robbie Grossman, would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he hit his second double of the season. Their third baseman, Jeimer Candelario, would end up going 3 for 5 for himself with 2 RBIs. And with this win, the Detroit Tigers are now 6-6. Well, both teams are now 6-6 following this, but with this win, the Tigers are 6-6. They are tied with the Chicago White Sox for the third best record in the American League Central, as they currently trail the Royals by a game. And with this loss, the Houston Astros are now 6-6. That is the third best record in the American League West, as they currently trail the first place Los Angeles Angels by a game. Jumping out to Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Rays hosted the Texas Rangers, and the Rangers were able to beat the Rays 5-1 as they were able to score 4 of their runs in the 7th inning. And for the Tampa Bay Rays in this matchup, the loss will go to their starting pitcher, Josh Fleming, who allowed 1 earned run in 5 innings pitches. He struck out 2 batters on the day. With this loss, Fleming is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher. Their elite right fielder, Randy Arozarena, will go 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. Their first baseman, Yandy Diaz, will go 2 for 4. Same with their center fielder, Manuel Margot. The only player to bring a run home would be their second baseman, Brandon Lau, who went 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he had his first home run of the season. For the Texas Rangers, the win will go to their starting pitcher, Kohei Arihara, who would allow no earned runs and 3 hits in 5.2 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters on the day. For their designated hitter, David Dahl, would end up going 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run. And then their first baseman, Nate Lowe, would end up going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he had his 4th home run of the season. With this win, the Texas Rangers are now 5-7. That is, they are tied with the Oakland Athletics for the worst record in the AL West, as they both trail the Los Angeles Angels by 2 games in the AL West. And with this loss, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 5-7, tied with the New York Yankees for the worst record in the AL East, as they currently trail the Boston Red Sox by 4 games. Jumping out to New York, Chase Sadie and the New York Mets were able to take over the top of the NL East as they beat the Phillies 5-1 as they scored 3 runs in the last 2 innings that they played. For the Phillies in this matchup, the loss will go to their starting pitcher, Zach Wheeler, who allowed 3 earned runs in 6.1 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters on the day. With this loss, Wheeler is now 1-2 as a starting pitcher. Their elite right fielder, Bryce Harper, will go 0 for 4 as he struck out 3 times. And then their second baseman, Gene Segura, was the only player to finish with more than 1 hit and bring a runner home. He went 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run. He hit his first home run of the season in the 5th inning. And for the New York Mets in this matchup, the win and the start will go to David Peterson, who allowed 1 earned run in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 10 batters on the day. For the Mets in this matchup, their center fielder, Brandon Nimmo, will go 3 for 5 with a run on the day. Their elite shortstop, Francisco Lindor, will go 2 for 4 with 2 runs himself. Their left fielder, Dominic Smith, would finish 3 for 5. Their elite first baseman, Pete Alonso, will go 0 for 3 as he finished with an RBI himself. And then their catcher, James McCann, would end up going 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run, as James McCann hit the only home run for the Mets, his first of the season. It would come in the 8th inning. And with this win, the New York Mets now sit on top of the National League East as they sit a full game ahead of the second-place Philadelphia Phillies, who now sit at 6-6 with the second best record in the National League East following this loss. Jumping out to Atlanta, the Atlanta Braves, the defending NL East champs, hosted the Miami Marlins, And in a game that would go to the 10th inning, it would end up being a double from Jesus Aguilar that would win the game for the Marlins, their 5th of the season. For the Atlanta Braves in this matchup, the start will go to Charlie Morton, who allowed 5 earned runs in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 9 batters on the day. And the loss will go to their relief pitcher Tyler Matzik, who saw 1 run scored in the inning that he pitched, as he struck out 3 batters on the day. For Atlanta, their elite right fielder Ronald Acuna Jr. would end up going 3 for 5 with 4 RBIs and 3 runs, as he hit 2 home runs on the day. He now has 6 on the season. He also has 6 doubles. He hit a 6th double of the season yesterday too. Their elite first baseman, reigning National League MVP Freddie Freeman, will go 2 for 5 with an RBI himself. Their elite left fielder Marcell Ozuna will go 0 for 5 as he struck out 3 times. Their elite second baseman, Ozzie Albies, would go 0 for 1 as he walked 3 times. And then their center fielder, Ender Inciarte, would go 2 for 3 with a run himself. For the Miami Marlins, the start will go to Nick Neidert, who allowed 3 earned runs in 4.2 innings pitches. He struck out 3. He didn't get the decision. The win would go to their relief pitcher, John Curtis, who allowed only 1 hit in the 1 inning that he pitched as he struck out 1. He's now 2-0 as a starting pitcher, and the save would go to Emi Garcia. That's his 2nd save of the season. For the Marlins, their first baseman, Jesus Aguilar, will go 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run on the day. And their second baseman, Jazz Chisholm Jr., will go 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run for himself. With this win, the Miami Marlins are now 5-6. That is the 3rd best record in the NL East, as they currently trail the Mets by a game and a half. With this loss, the Atlanta Braves are now 4-8. That is the worst record in the entire league, as they currently trail the New York Mets by 3 total games. Jumping out to the south side of Chicago, the Chicago White Sox hosted the Cleveland Indians, and their starting pitcher, Carlos Rodon, would carry a perfect game into the 9th. He would hit the 26th batter, which would put the runner on base, but he still finished with the no-hitter. The 2nd no-hitter of the season now belongs to Carlos Rodon. For the Cleveland Indians in this matchup, the start will go to Zach Plesac, who allowed 6 earned runs in .2 innings. Because of course the White Sox won this game 8-0 alongside Rodon's amazing pitching. 6 runs scored in the 1st inning. All given up by Plesac, as he wouldn't make it out the first. With this loss, he's now 1-2 as a starting pitcher. And like I said, no one on the team was able to log a single hit. Their elite third baseman, Jose Ramirez, would go 0 for 3 on the day. And for the Chicago White Sox, of course, the win and, of course, the big performance would come from their starting pitcher, Carlos Rodon, who would allow no earned runs, no hits, no walks, but he hit 1 batter in 9 innings as he struck out 7. And then in the lineup for Chicago, their center fielder, Luis Robert, will go 2 for 5 with an RBI and a run. Their elite first baseman, reigning American League MVP, Jose Abreu, will go 0 for 3 as he walked twice. Their designated hitter, Yermin Mercedes, will go 3 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run himself. And then their second baseman, Nick Madrigal, will go 3 for 4 with an RBI and a run. And with this win, the Chicago White Sox are now 6-6. They're tied with the Detroit Tigers for the 3rd best record in the American League Central, as they trail the Kansas City Royals by a game. And with this loss, the Cleveland Indians are now 6-5. That is the 2nd best record in the American League Central, as they now trail the Kansas City Royals by half a game. And then last but not least, the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers hosted the Colorado Rockies and were able to pull off a 4-2 win to pick up their 10th of the season, as they became the first team in the major leagues to pick up double-digit wins, as the Dodgers are most definitely surging at the moment. For the Colorado Rockies, the loss and start will go to John Gray, who allowed 3 earned runs in 4 innings pitches. He struck out 3 batters. With his loss, John Gray is now 1-1 as a pitcher. Their left fielder, Rafael Tapia, will go 2 for 4 with a walk. Their elite right fielder, Charlie Blackmon, will go 0 for 4 as he finished with an RBI himself. And then their first baseman, CJ Cron, will go 2 for 4. For the Los Angeles Dodgers, the start went to Dustin May, who allowed 2 earned runs in 4.1 innings pitches. He struck out 6. The win would end up going to Corey Knebel in relief, as Kenley Jansen picked up his 3rd save of the season as he struck out all 3 of the batters he faced. For the Los Angeles Dodgers, hitting, or for their batting lineup, their elite center fielder Mookie Betts would go 1-for-3 with a run. Their elite shortstop Corey Seager will go 1-for-4 with a walk and a run himself. Their third baseman Justin Turner will go 2-for-4 with 2 RBIs on the day and a run. And with this win, the like I said, the LA Dodgers are now 10-2. That is the best record in the NL West and the best record in the National League as a whole. They now sit 2 games ahead of the second place San Francisco Giants, just to give a sense of where they are in their division. With this loss, the Colorado Rockies are now 3-9. That is the worst record in the NL East, as they currently trail the Dodgers by 7 total games in the division. So that's virtually everything that's going on with baseball from yesterday. Looking out to the scores today, starting with the primetime matchups, because there will be earlier games, because today is Thursday. This is usually the travel day where teams are going to transition for their next series. Early on, or I guess looking at the primetime games at 7:10, the Tampa Bay Rays are going to host the Texas Rangers on ESPN+, as Rich Hill and Jordan Lyles both look to pick up their second win of the season. Outside of those games, at 12:10, the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies are going to face off at 12:10, as Jacob deGrom, the Mets' elite starting pitcher, looks to get his first win of the season. At 12:20, the Atlanta Braves are going to host the Miami Marlins, as Ian Anderson, the Braves' young starting pitcher, looks to get his first his first win of the season. At 12:35, the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to host the San Diego Padres. At the same time, the Baltimore Orioles are going to host the Seattle Mariners for game 1 of their doubleheader. The second game will happen at 4:05. At 1:10, the Minnesota Twins will host the Boston Red Sox. At 2:10, the Chicago White Sox, featuring Lance Lynn, will host the Cleveland Indians, hosting Aaron Savali. Both these pitchers are undefeated at the moment. At 7:05, the Washington Nationals, led by Patrick Corbin, are going to host the Arizona Diamondbacks. And at 8:10, the Kansas City Royals will host the Toronto Blue Jays. At 9:40, the Oakland Athletics will host the Detroit Tigers. And at 10:10, the defending champions Los Angeles Dodgers, led by Julio Urias, are going to host Austin Gomber and the Colorado Rockies. With that said, that's virtually everything that's going on with baseball. Last but not least, taking it out to see what's going on in the world of soccer. Looking out to yesterday and seeing how the Champions League finished up, it was the last day for these. It was the second day for the second leg of the quarterfinal matchups. Coming into yesterday, there were 6 teams left in Champions League. Now there are only 4, now that 2 more teams have been eliminated. In Dortmund, Borussia Dortmund hosted Manchester City. Man City came in with a 2-1 aggregate lead, and they were able to pull off another 2-1 win. Jude Bellingham, the young English midfielder for Borussia Dortmund, would actually tie the aggregate at 2 in the 15th minute, but then it would be a penalty kick from Mahrez in the 55th minute, and then a goal from Phil Foden in the 75th minute to give Manchester City the 4-2 aggregate advantage to advance them to the next round, and they will face off against PSG, following PSG advancing versus Bayern. And then looking at the other matchup, Liverpool hosted Real Madrid. Real Madrid came into this matchup having beat Liverpool 3-1 in Real Madrid. And then in a game with no goals scored, Real Madrid would advance. They would be the team to advance to face off against Chelsea in the Champions League semifinal. And of course, I'm going to do a preview for the semifinal in a bit, but looking forward to what's going on today. Today will be the second leg of quarterfinals in Europa League. First off, AS Roma will host Ajax Amsterdam, as AS Roma currently leads 2-1 on aggregate. Manchester United will host Granada at 3:00, as Man U currently leads 2-0 on aggregate. Slavia Prague will host Arsenal at 3:00, as this series is tied 1-1 on aggregate. And Villarreal from La Liga and Dynamo Zagreb from Croatia are going to face off against one another at 3:00, as Villarreal currently leads this matchup on aggregates. So that's everything that's going on within the world of soccer. And then even within CONCACAF, Columbus Crew is playing one of their Champions League matchups, as they currently lead Real Esteli 4-0 on aggregates. With that said, that's everything that's going on with sports today. Today is Thursday, April 15th, 2021. I want to thank everyone for listening to all 59 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well, and once all of today's matchups are done, I will come back to you tomorrow on Friday, April 16th, 2021, with everything that happened with today's matchups. I want to thank everyone once again for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another piece tomorrow. Peace out. I'm James Sims, and this is The Elite out here in this quarantine.